Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Saturday, July the 22nd, 2023. Today I want to have a Joe Biden update. I want to look at what's going on in his horoscope at the moment. I'm not going to go into any great detail. I don't think there's anything spectacular going on, but I just want to, keep touch with Biden's chart. As you know, or perhaps you know, that I regard Joe Biden as an incredibly dangerous president. I want to have a video at some stage to explain in detail about why I think he's so dangerous. But I do think he's going to get a lot more dangerous after his solar return, which is in November. Of course, that assumes he's still alive in November. I assume he will still be alive in November. But yes, he is a very dangerous man, and it's a great shame he's in control of this country. And yeah, it's going to get worse, I think. But I don't really want to spend too much time today looking at that. I actually wanted to spend some time, as well as the update, I wanted to consider the horoscope of the accident. The chart when his first wife, was killed in a car accident December the 18th, 1972. I have looked at this chart before, but I actually want to look at it again to see how it relates to his first wife, Neilea Biden, because I think there are some things there that we do need to take note of. And there are kind of hints there also of, how dangerous Joe Biden is, because, he has a horoscope of someone who attracts accidents. So, Neilea Biden, by marrying Joe, was in some respects putting herself at great risk. Likewise, the American people, by voting him in as president, were taking a huge risk. If they'd made the effort to look at his horoscope. So that's something I want to look at today. But first, I want to consider today's stars. Today is Saturday, July the 22nd, 2023. So here we go. This is what's going on today. There's Joe Biden, top right, as you know. So I've set this chart for New York, midday, July the 22nd, 2023. And in many respects, it's rather like yesterday, except a little bit more intense. And what I'm particularly thinking about is the Grand Cross, which was starting to form yesterday, and now it's pretty much there. So by a Grand Cross, I mean this cross. You can see the cross in the horoscope. You've got Pluto opposition the Sun. The opposition is pretty close now. It's not going to get much closer than that. And this opposition is square the north and south nodes. And so we should see this opposition as telling us something about these two oppositions. Well, I know the north and south node are always in opposition by definition, but we should see this Grand Cross, as about the times we're living in. As I said yesterday, it is about a mass of people. It's about how society is affected by what is going on around it. Pluto is, as I said, Reinhold Ebertin said, is about the destiny of a large group of people, and in a negative sense, the tragic destiny of a large group of people. And so this is something we need to be aware of. That's not to say that there's going to be some massive event and loads of people are going to get killed or anything like that. It's about awareness. It's about awareness of the tragedy all around us. So if we're sensitive, that's what we're going. I think that's what we're going to pick up on. Um, and the Sun opposition Pluto is going to really, really trigger that. That's this Sun opposition Pluto, probably the most important aspect today. It can work in two ways. Pluto can be about power. So for some people, Sun opposition Pluto is going to be about how can I leverage my power in as huge a way as possible, in almost in an obsessive way. That's one way in which it could work out. People may kind of use their emotions to try to assert control over the people around us. But Pluto can also be quite secretive. It can drive things underground. And for some of us, it might be all too much, and we might just want to sort of retreat into the shadows, because that way it feels a bit safer. But moving away from these sort of heavy concepts, the day is not necessarily going to be too bad. You can see that the moon in Virgo is trine Uranus in Taurus. So for some of us, it could be quite exciting. Things to do, maybe events to go to, and there are things going on. Yet we still have to be careful, because the moon, yes, it might go to a trine of Uranus, but it also goes to an opposition of Neptune. Moon opposition Neptune represents perhaps sort of emotional confusion, not really knowing what's going on, getting distracted by the wrong things, being deluded. So that's one manifestation of this moon opposition Neptune. And while this is going on, Jupiter is in a 45-degree relationship to Neptune. So there's Jupiter, 25 to 12:35 Taurus. There's Neptune, 27:34 Pisces. So that is 45 degrees, and that is an 1/8 of the circle. In other words, if you take a cake, you cut it into 8 equal-sized slices, it's going to be 45 degrees a slice. So Jupiter, semi-square, Neptune. What does that mean? Well, Jupiter is the desire for expansion. Jupiter is the desire to go beyond our immediate boundaries. Yet Neptune is the planet of confusion. So what might happen is that we lose touch with what we're doing. We lose our sense of reality. We get caught up in fantasy. So we go into areas that we shouldn't be going into, and as a result, we could get ourselves into trouble. And that's perhaps emphasized by the fact that Jupiter and Neptune are on the Uranus-Vulcan midpoint. So Uranus and Vulcan is about potentially massive force. Vulcan, of course, is a hypothetical planet to do with great power. So Uranus, Vulcan, great power. But some of us, maybe not ordinary people, maybe politicians, military men and women, maybe, getting the wrong idea about what is possible and what is not possible, maybe in a battlefield situation. I mean, that of course takes us to the Ukraine. Just overestimating what we can do, having a fantasy about what is possible. I suppose it needn't be in the Ukraine. It could be driving a car, whatever. Just getting the wrong idea about what can be accomplished. And just in reality, we can't accomplish as much as we think. But if we go over the top, we could cause a lot of damage through our wishful thinking. So that's something going on today. Mars is making an aspect to Zeus, and that's kind of more of the same. Mars is a military planet. Zeus is a military. Zeus is about weaponry, so use of weaponry. Mars aspecting Zeus. So yes, weapons. Yeah, okay. In America, lots of weapons, but there might be news regarding how weapons are used. And Saturday, maybe into the weekend. So that's something we have to watch out for. Okay, I should probably finish on an optimistic note. Mercury is aspecting Cupido, is on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. Cupido, hypothetical planet. So, Cupido on a Venus-Jupiter midpoint is, that's been around for a day or two. And so that represents the union, people coming together, relationships perhaps suddenly getting closer, talk of marriage perhaps, and with Mercury coming in there, Mercury hitting Cupido, almost acting as a trigger, that might be talk of marriage, talk, if you're in a relationship, talk of getting closer, doing something to show the outside world that you're getting closer, or something like that. So yeah, so marriage for some people, for some of you, might suddenly become an issue, not necessarily in a bad sense. So that's the overall picture. I think if you tread carefully around the events today, things should be fine. Focusing on gentle, low-profile excitement, maybe some gentle intensification of romantic pursuits. That should be fine. But just be aware that there are some really big societal things going on, and large groups of people are in trouble. But you can see that anyway. I mean, you just have to go to the grocery store, you go to Safeways, it's my wife went to Safeways this morning, or was it yesterday morning? And she said she heard some guy completely scream in an incredibly loud voice, and she described it as an apocalyptic scream. And maybe that's a sign of what's going on. That scream outside Safeways. You don't have to go to the other side of the world to see the tragic destiny of humanity. It's just go to the grocery store. You'll see it. So let's now look at my forecast for today. My star sign forecast for today. So as usual, I did my forecast for today, which is Saturday, July the 22nd, 2023. Aries. Look after your health. The moon is continuing to move through health-conscious Virgo and is approaching an opposition aspect with Neptune. There are plenty of things that could undermine you, and that includes toxins and pollutants. In terms of finances, a quiet revolution may be required. Taurus, you've got big ideas, but are they realistic? There is a danger that you get carried away by fantasy and get involved in something that has little hope of a positive outcome. You therefore have to make a special effort to be realistic, and you must understand that the things that glitter most are the things that need to be avoided. Gemini, the last few days have made a strong impression on you, and it feels that something is stirring up. I'm not saying that this is good or bad. It rather depends on the situation, but you know that something has to change, and in the noisy quietness of the Gemini mind, ideas are starting to form like bubbles in boiling water. Cancer, the Sun is on the brink of leaving your star sign, and as it makes its exit, it makes an opposition aspect to Pluto. This could represent a power struggle, or a feeling that relationships have to change. On the other hand, some Cancerians may want to push themselves and their agenda to the absolute limit. Leo, it's not a day for playing games. There are serious things going on which can't be trivialized, but if you accept the challenge and are ready to adopt a tough, uncompromising approach, then you may have some unexpected success. In terms of money, it's important to have a keen eye for detail. Virgo, the last couple of days have probably been tense, and it may have been difficult to relax. Yet complications are starting to ease, and you'll have greater scope for enjoying yourself. But as you go out into the world, you'll start to see that something has changed, and as a result, some of your opinions might also have to change. Libra, you thought you wanted to move to somewhere different, to somewhere special, but actually you don't. You're comfortable where you are, almost, and it really is okay to be indecisive and to postpone important decisions. Later on, perhaps in the early autumn, you'll be able to make a clear decision. Scorpio, your social life is starting to ease up. There are more things going on and your friends are on better form. However, it's not a time to be complacent. Things could still go wrong, and you're also aware that the society around you is in very poor shape. Do you feel sympathy, or do you just want to escape? Sagittarius, you get a break and you can start doing things your way, and this applies particularly to your career, where your understanding of basic realities allows you to make an important advance. But you can't be sloppy, and you mustn't let a moment of instability spoil the party. Remember, Saturday is ruled by the planet Saturn, and it is a serious energy. Capricorn, you can have a big influence on the world around you, if you so wish, but you're holding back because it seems too much like hard work. However, there is an issue of responsibility. You're here for a purpose, and if something is wrong and you can do something about it, then maybe you have a certain obligation to act. Aquarius, it's important to be perceptive, to engage your heart as well as your brain, because there are so many things that need to be picked up on and processed. You can then start to understand the world. In relationships, partners are experiencing a change or even a transformation. It's probably for the best. Pisces, relationships start to normalize, and now might be a good time to put the complications of the past behind you. But you are still capable of making mistakes because of a 45-degree aspect between Jupiter, your ruling planet, and Neptune. You want to reach out in a particular direction, but you don't know what you're letting yourself in for. So that's the astrology for today, and I am now going to look at the I Ching. So, as usual, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Saturday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? And the first hexagram is rather good. It's increase. Whatever we're doing, we're going to increase what we have. That's not just about money, but it's about people's respect for us, our general worth, self-esteem, and it will really feel that things are going well. But two lines change. This line changes and this line changes. And so we get, we move to a hexagram with a very different flavour. Hexagram 23, which is splitting apart. You can see the splitting apart. You know, this is not a stable structure. You've got this this unbroken line at the top. It's like evil has just mounted up. It's just got out of control. It's going up and up and up, and it's almost hit the top. So, you know, we think everything's okay. We're making good progress, and then suddenly things go completely wrong. It may not be our fault. We just may be in a situation where we just are dealing with elements that are just out of control. So if we're involved in something and we're in, you know, it seems to be going well, we need to know when to stop, because the good times are coming to an end. Though remember, this is a very short-term reading. I'm only talking about today. So quit while you're ahead, and be aware of these undermining influences that are all around. You know, there's nothing that can be done in a short term. You need to let them have their way. Let them do whatever they have to do. I mean, in the end, this evil will exhaust itself. It must. But in a short term, it might be best to just step back. But I must emphasize, this is a short term. It's a short term reading. It's just about today. It's not about the end of the world. It's probably just about annoyances. You know, maybe you're doing something successfully and then people start disturbing you, and, you know, one thing leads to another, and you no longer have any control over the situation. But tomorrow is another day. So I now want to go back to astrology and look at Joe Biden. So here we go. Here is Joe Biden's chart. So you can see that he was born on November the 20th, 1942 at 8:30 a.m. in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So what worries me about Biden's chart is this Saturn-Uranus conjunction on the descendant. You know, when you've got Saturn-Uranus on conjunction on a descendant, you know, this may say something about the spouse. That is a signature of a spouse who dies in an accident. So as we know, his first wife on December the 18th, 1972, I think she drove out of the lane she was supposed to be driving on, and she drove into the path of a truck, and she was killed, daughter was killed, and the two sons, who'd be Beau and Hunter, is that right? Beau and Hunter Biden, yeah, were seriously injured. And so that's it. There's specifically Uranus is a planet of accidents. So you know, you marry someone with Uranus on a descendant, you become part of that Uranus on a descendant, and so that's what happens. And likewise, when the American people vote Joe Biden as their president, you know, they're kind of giving themselves Joe Biden's horoscope as their chart. So they suddenly have a leader who is accident prone, and the American people suddenly become accident prone. I suppose we're thinking particularly of war. For example, getting into a nuclear war with Ukraine just by mistake. You know, Uranus in the 7th house, it's the same thing. So what I'm saying is, having a nuclear war with Russia, and Biden's wife getting killed in a car accident, even if it was her fault, the two events are kind of connected symbolically through through Joe Biden's chart. Of course, I hope there won't be a nuclear war. There probably won't be, but we do have to be careful. So as far as what's going on at the moment, well, I should point out Biden's north node is at 0 degrees Virgo, and I think that north node at 0 Virgo may help explain why he's so obsessed with Ukraine. Because if you look at Ukraine's horoscope, Ukraine has got its sun at 0 degrees 56 Virgo. So Biden has got his north node on Ukraine's sun. And so with the north node being where we're supposed to be going to, it's almost like Biden feels it's his destiny to be doing everything he can to support Ukraine. And of course, this didn't just start in 2022. I mean, don't forget his Hunter Biden was involved in Ukraine. There's been more news about it. You can look at it. You can look it up. What was Hunter Biden doing? I think did he have some consultancy, or he was involved in some energy company in Ukraine? So yeah, that North Node has been pushing Biden in a direction of Ukraine. And, he probably just can't help it. It's quite compulsive. Yes, it might be his destiny. In the same way that it might have been Lyndon B. Johnson's destiny to get the United States involved in the Vietnam War. But it's still not very nice. But yeah, the universe may want America to get involved in the Ukraine for purposes which are beyond our comprehension. War, nuclear war, complete destruction, everything that's going on in that part of the world. He just can't help himself. Now, as far as what's going on at the moment, Saturn, the planet Saturn, is at around 6 degrees Pisces. It's here, so that means it's making a square aspect to Biden's Saturn-Uranus opposition, and that Uranus is right on Biden's descendant. So as Saturn goes backwards, goes retrograde, and it stops going retrograde, it goes direct at the beginning of November. So between now and November, Saturn is causing more and more difficulties for this Saturn-Uranus, for this conjunction, and it's just going to be really difficult for Biden to get out of the Russian situation. I don't think it's going to be fortunate for him. There's probably going to be bad news from Russia, and he's just going to keep doubling down. Then we have Venus is going retrograde tomorrow, and it goes retrograde square Biden's Sun-Venus square. So Venus is causing a few issues for Biden there. What does that Venus mean? I suppose it may be how he relates to the people around him. He may be very difficult on a social level. I mean, I think he's difficult anyway because he's got this Sun-Venus conjunction in Scorpio. Sun-Venus conjunction in Scorpio in a man's chart is about someone who treats women badly, or bad things happen to women. Now, one way in that manifested is his first wife dying in a car crash. Another way it manifested was the way he treated Anita Hill. That was on the it was a long time ago when Clarence Thomas was there was a committee hearing about Clarence Thomas getting onto the Supreme Court, and his way he had treated Anita Hill, Biden just dismissed it. And so that's a real blot on Biden's record, and I think we can really see that in with his Sun-Venus conjunction. And so maybe with that Venus square Venus, we'll see some aspect of it, the way he relates to women. I don't know. Maybe we just won't know. It'll all happen. It'll all happen behind closed doors. So those are a few things going on. I should point out also that around August the 11th, transiting Mars hits his midheaven. It's a short-term aspect, but it's quite an angry, aggressive aspect. And so, he's going to want to take aggressive action, in perhaps even if it's in that sort of cantankerous old man kind of way. So we have to watch out for that. And where this is all leading to his birthday. His birthday on November the 20th, because he gets a new solar return. The solar return being the moment the sun returns to where it was when he was born. And here is his solar return for 2023. And as you can see, it is really bad. And I've shown this chart before, but I think all of us need to be aware of this solar return because it's so bad. So I don't think there's any harm in repeating this solar return. Uranus is on the midheaven in Biden in this solar return. Mars is on the IC. The moon is on the descendant. Remember, this is descendant, what the enemies. Moon is on the Saturn, on the Mars-Uranus midpoint. This solar return is so bad that I'm fairly convinced it means it's something's going to happen. Sometimes solar returns are hit and miss, but in this case, we've seen this Saturn-Uranus, this Mars-Uranus signature again and again. You look at his inauguration chart. Hunter Biden has got a Mars-Uranus opposition, but it's such a repeated theme that I think Biden is in danger, America is in danger, the world is in danger as a result of this solar return. So, hopefully, for whatever reason, Joe Biden won't be president when that solar return happens. Maybe he'll hand over to Kamala Harris. Whatever you think of Kamala Harris, she's not as bad as Biden. She's not as dangerous as Biden. I know a lot of people don't like her, but at least she doesn't have that danger factor that Biden had. And I just think this solar return is when Joe Biden really becomes dangerous. Now, as far as his first wife is concerned, I thought it'd be useful to look at her chart, look at the chart of the accident. So here is her chart, Neilea Biden. Don't know the time of birth. She was born on July the 28th, 1942. She was killed on December the 18th, 1972, so just after her 30th birthday. We note that she had Uranus on the nodes, which does that suggest that it was somehow her destiny to die in that car accident? Certainly in hindsight. I would never say that to someone before it had happened, particularly as it's so generational. So many people have Uranus square their nodes. But in retrospect, for whatever reason the universe wanted, maybe that was part of her destiny. The accident. If you set up a bi-wheel if you put her chart in the inner ring, you put the accident chart on the outer ring, you can see that Mars was exactly opposition the ascendant when the accident happened, at the time of the accident. Assuming I've got the time right, I went for 2:30 p.m. in Hockessin, Delaware. Maybe I got that wrong. That was as far as I can see. That was the closest I could get to the time of the accident. So this Mars was making an 135 degree aspect to her Venus, and also Mercury was making a quincunx to her Venus, and it was reforming. So this Mercury-Neptune conjunction was making a quincunx to her Venus. So this might have been a time where her concentration wasn't great, or something like that. But Mars was also sesquiquadrate her Venus. And then look at the Moon. The Moon was at around 4:28 Gemini, so was hitting her Uranus. Now, I regard the Moon as being a trigger here. Now, the reason I think it's a trigger is in terms of her solar arc directions. Now, solar arc directions, just to remind us what solar arc directions are. Solar arc directions are when you move every single planet in the horoscope by 1 degree every year. So you then would say that after, if you look at, say, at 30, when you're 30 years old, that your solar arc directions would have all the planets moved by 30 degrees. So if you look at the Sun, so her natal Sun is at around 5 Leo, 456 Leo. So what would happen if we were to move this Sun 30 degrees? Well, if you move the Sun 30 degrees, you'd be moving it on to the North Node. You'd be moving the Sun onto this nodal axis, and I'll show you what I mean. Again, we're going to put Neilea Biden's chart in the middle, in the center, and we're going to take her solar arc directions for December the 18th, 1972. And we can see that her Sun has solar arc directed to around 4 Virgo. Remember, we don't have her exact time of birth, so this is it's a bit approximate. So the Sun has solar arc directed to the square of Uranus. So her Sun-Pluto conjunction has moved to this square of Uranus, and I think that's the accident. And then the Moon in the sky was conjunct Uranus, and that was when the accident happened. And looking at the chart of the accident itself, notice that Mars is exactly on the 7th house cusp. So that Mars was conjunct Joe Biden's Mercury. So I suppose that's when the news came in. But this Mars 7th house, we can give another example of Mars on the 7th house. Let's think. If we relocate Joe Biden's horoscope for Moscow, so we take his exact time of birth, but we just relocate it for Moscow. We put it in Moscow rather than Scranton, Pennsylvania. We get this. We get Mars on the 7th house cusp. So almost like Biden is kind of destined to have this issue with Russia. If anyone's going to have a war with Russia, it's Biden, because his relocated chart has Mars in the 7th. You've got a load of other stuff in the 7th. You've got all his Scorpio planets are in the 7th house. This is why he's so obsessed with Russia. Now, going back to the accident, it was interesting to look at the lunation, the lunation immediately before the accident. So the accident happened on December the 18th, 1972, and this is the new moon. This is the new moon immediately before the accident. So on the surface, it doesn't seem necessarily very impressive until you compare it with Biden's chart. So let me show you what I mean. So if we put Biden's chart in the middle, we put in the lunation. So there is Biden's sun, and we can see that. Can you see there's a Venus-Mars conjunction? And that Venus-Mars conjunction is about 14 degrees from his sun. And then you've got a new moon, the other side. So his Sun-Venus conjunction is on the midpoint of Venus-Mars on one side and the new moon on the other side. So that new moon was directly hitting his Sun-Venus conjunction when you allow the midpoint. So you've got new moon here, Venus-Mars conjunction here, and right in the middle was Biden's Sun-Venus conjunction. And I think the Sun-Venus conjunction is a signature of a woman in trouble, in this case, of a woman dying. So I think we've got enough there to see, why the new moon, what astrologically what was going on with that accident. I want to do one final thing. It's a kind of a question, really, and it relates to the Ukraine chart. Now, a thing about Venus is that Venus actually has an 8-year cycle. Every 8 years, Venus repeats itself. If you have an ephemeris and you go and you look at the positions of position of Venus, and then you go back 8 years, you'll see it's pretty much in the same place every 8 years. Now, if you think about Ukraine got its independence in 1991, so that was 32 years ago. So that's 4 times 8, isn't it? 4 times 8 equals 32. And remember, Venus is going stationary retrograde now at around 28 Leo. So if we go to the Ukraine chart, we see that Venus is at 28 Leo. So Venus is kind of returning to the place it was at the independence. So this is really quite an important time for Ukraine because of this Venus. And we look at Venus, and it's on the 8th house cusp. That's sort of connected with death in a way. And then we look at the midpoint of Venus. If we look at Ukraine's midpoints, then we will notice that it is aspecting the Venus in Ukraine's chart is aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint. Now, Venus on the Mars-Saturn midpoint can mean death of women, but it's a general significator to my mind of death and destruction. And I don't think that this Venus return for Ukraine is necessarily very fortunate. So yeah, we need to watch this. And tomorrow Venus does go retrograde. So yeah, that's something to consider. But I've gone on for far too long, and it's time that I shut up. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.